Old woman saved by a veteran and his dog. Then she gave him her shop, and God worked a miracle. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get started with today's incredible story. On a cold and stormy night, a homeless veteran named Jack and his loyal German shepherd, Max, found themselves trudging down an empty road in a small town on the outskirts of town. They had been wandering for weeks, hoping for a fresh start, but with no luck. The harsh winds cut through Jack's worn jacket, and the rain slashed at his face like tiny needles. Max trotted along beside him, his fur soaked, but his eyes always alert. Jack's eyes were heavy with the weariness of a man who had seen too many battles, both on the field and in life. The streetlights flickered, and Jack wondered when he would finally find a place to rest. As they passed by a small bakery, a sudden sound broke the silence. It was the distinct sound of a woman's voice, faint and panicked, calling for help. Jack's heart skipped a beat as Max immediately perked up, ears twitching toward the sound. Without a second thought, Jack ran toward the source, Max right behind him. There, in front of the bakery, an old woman was trapped under a fallen tree, her fragile frame struggling against the weight of the thick branches. Her voice was weak, but desperate. "Please help me," she cried, her eyes wide with fear. Jack didn't hesitate. He rushed to her side, pushing the branches away with the strength of a man who had learned to survive against all odds. Max barked loudly, as if to warn any danger, while Jack managed to free the woman from the debris. "You're going to be okay," Jack said, his voice calm yet firm. The woman gasped for air, looking up at him with wide, grateful eyes. She was small, hunched with age, and her clothes were soaked from the storm. Her silver hair clung to her face, and Jack noticed the deep lines of years lived in hardship. Despite the chaos, she smiled faintly. "You've saved my life," she whispered, her voice trembling. Jack helped her stand, and together, they moved toward the safety of the bakery. Inside, the warmth of the oven was a welcome contrast to the cold outside. The old woman introduced herself as Margaret, the owner of the bakery. She had lived in this small town for decades, but the recent storm had caused damage to her property, and she had been struggling to keep the business afloat. Jack could see the sadness in her eyes, but he also saw a glimmer of hope, a quiet determination to continue. "I didn't think anyone would come for me," Margaret said softly, looking at Jack with deep gratitude. "You've given me more than I could have ever asked for." As she caught her breath, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of warmth growing inside him. There was something about Margaret's kindness that reminded him of better days. She had no family left, no one to turn to, yet she still had a heart full of generosity. Jack's mind raced as he realized how much she needed help. And just as he was about to offer to assist her with repairs around the bakery, Margaret interrupted him. "I have something to give you," she said, her voice steady now. "I want to thank you for saving me. This bakery, it's all I have left. I want you to have it." Jack blinked, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. "What?" he asked, incredulous. "You can't be serious." But Margaret only nodded, her gaze unwavering. "I want to leave this place to you. You've shown me that there are still good people in the world, and you deserve a fresh start. Please, take it." Jack stared at her, overwhelmed by her generosity. He had come to this town expecting nothing but hardship, and now, somehow, this stranger had offered him the one thing he never thought he'd have again, a chance at redemption. He glanced down at Max, whose tail was wagging gently, as if to acknowledge the unspoken bond between them all. Jack took a deep breath. "I don't know what to say," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you." Margaret smiled, her eyes twinkling. "God works in mysterious ways, doesn't he?" And with that, Jack's life was forever changed. I had no idea what had just happened. One moment, I was trudging through the rain and snow with my dog, Max, and the next, I had just been handed the keys to a bakery. Margaret had insisted, her frail hands pressing the old brass keys into mine, her eyes filled with an earnestness that I couldn't refuse. The warmth of the bakery wrapped around me, and for the first time in a long while, I felt something stir inside me, a sense of purpose, perhaps, or maybe just a flicker of hope. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with a bakery, but I knew one thing. I had to honor her gift. I could not let this kindness go to waste. Margaret had given me more than just a building and a business. She had given me a chance at a new life, something I thought was beyond me. But how was I supposed to start over? How was a homeless veteran like me supposed to take charge of something so alive? That night, as the storm raged outside, I sat in the quiet bakery, sipping coffee with Max at my feet, and thought about what I had gotten myself into. Max, as always, sat alert, his amber eyes scanning the room. He had been with me through everything, through the loss, the loneliness, the battles, always by my side, always waiting for the next command. But now, it felt like we were waiting for something bigger. I took in the walls of the bakery, lined with old wooden shelves, jars filled with dried flowers, and the faint smell of sugar and cinnamon. There was a warmth here that I hadn't felt in years. Margaret's words echoed in my mind. You've shown me there are still good people in the world. Maybe she was right. Maybe I was meant to be one of those good people. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. I worked with a few locals who stopped by to offer their help, bringing in supplies and offering advice on how to restore the place. A local carpenter, Tom, came by to fix the broken shutters and the sagging roof. The bakery had been damaged by the storm, but it was clear it had been struggling. For years, I knew I couldn't bring it back to life without help, so I accepted every offer with gratitude. At night, I spent hours cleaning the counters, wiping away the dust, and organizing the shelves. Max would lie at my feet, always keeping me company, never demanding anything. But there was one thing I knew. There was more to this place than just walls and shelves. The heart of the bakery was the people. Margaret had built this place from the ground up. She had baked her way through the years, feeding anyone who walked through the door. Her kindness had been the secret ingredient, and it was up to me to keep that spirit alive. I didn't know much about baking, but I was willing to learn. Every morning, I would wake up before the sun, gather the ingredients, and start working with the old oven, trying to make the dough rise the way it was supposed to. The first batch was a disaster, lumpy, undercooked, and flat, but I didn't give up. Max sat by the oven, watching me like I was a fool. I didn't blame him. I probably looked like one, but I kept trying. Day by day, the bakery started to look better. I patched up the roof, replaced the broken windows, and cleaned the old counters. And little by little, people started to come in. At first, it was just a few regulars, old faces from the town who had known Margaret for years. They came in for a coffee and a warm pastry, exchanging stories about the weather or their families. But as the days went on, more and more people started to show up. Word was getting around that the bakery was open again, and they were curious to see if the old place was still worth visiting. I started baking better, using Margaret's old recipes as a guide. They weren't perfect, but they had a charm to them. People didn't mind the little imperfections. It felt like a small miracle every time someone came in and left with a smile, carrying a box of pastries or a loaf of bread. One afternoon, as I was arranging some fresh loaves on the counter, the bell above the door rang, signaling someone's arrival. I looked up to see a woman standing in the doorway, her eyes scanning the bakery with a look of quiet admiration. She was tall, with dark brown hair tied in a practical ponytail, and she wore a green parka that seemed to blend in with the wintry scene outside. Her eyes met mine, and she smiled. "You must be the new owner," she said, her voice warm. I nodded, wiping my hands on my apron. "I guess so," I said. "I'm Jack, and this is Max." Max gave a friendly wag of his tail, as if to greet her. She crouched down to give him a scratch behind the ears. "It's nice to meet you both," she said. "I'm Lena. I'm the park ranger up the road." She paused, her eyes lingering on the bakery's shelves. "I've heard good things about this place. It's good to see it alive again." I smiled, feeling a wave of warmth wash over me. "Thanks," I said. "It's still a work in progress, but we're getting there." Lena looked around the bakery, clearly impressed by the progress I had made. "You're doing a great job," she said, before walking up to the counter. "I'll take a cinnamon roll, if you've got one." I handed her the fresh roll, and she paid with a crisp bill. As she turned to leave, she paused at the door. "I'll be back," she said with a smile. "And I'll bring more people with me." That moment stuck with me. It wasn't just the cinnamon roll or the warm coffee that brought people back. It was the feeling of hope, of something good returning to a place that had been left behind. And I realized that maybe this bakery wasn't just about baking. It was about healing. It was about giving people something to believe in again. I had been working at the bakery for several weeks now, and little by little, it was beginning to feel like my own. The smell of fresh bread and pastries filled the air each morning, and with every person who walked through the door, I felt like I was building something bigger than just a business. It wasn't just flour, sugar, and eggs. It was the taste of hope, the scent of second chances, and the warmth of community. I had come to realize that the bakery wasn't just about selling bread. It was about bringing people together, giving them a place to feel seen and valued. As the days passed, I started getting to know the regulars. There was John, the local mechanic, who came in every morning for a cup of coffee and a croissant, always telling stories about his adventures fixing old cars. Then there was Sarah, a teacher at the nearby elementary school, who would stop by after school for a sweet treat. She had a soft spot for Max and would always sneak him a biscuit. But the one person I hadn't expected to make a big impact was Lena, the park ranger who had stopped by a few weeks earlier. Lena returned to the bakery often, bringing friends, colleagues, and even strangers who were just passing through. She always sat at the corner table, her warm smile never wavering, as she talked to me about the beauty of the land surrounding our town, the way the trees whispered in the wind, and the old legends of the area. Over time, Lena and I became friends, and I began to see something in her that I hadn't noticed before: strength, resilience, and a quiet but undeniable faith in people. I never asked her much about her past, but something about the way she looked at me, the way she seemed to understand the weight I carried, made me feel like she knew exactly what I was going through. One afternoon, as I was cleaning up the last of the dishes after the lunch rush, Lena approached me, her eyes thoughtful. "Jack," she said, her voice soft, "I've been thinking a lot about your situation. About what you're doing here." I raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, as though choosing her words carefully. "You've built something here, something that has the potential to do more than just make money. This bakery could be a place for healing, more than just for the people who walk in, but for you too." Her words hit me harder than I expected. It wasn't just the bakery she was talking about, it was me. I had been running from my past for so long, thinking that I could outrun it. But now, with every batch of bread I baked, every smile I received from a customer, I felt something shifting inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this was my chance to stop running. Lena continued, her eyes steady as she watched me process her words. "I know you've been through a lot, Jack. We all have our struggles. But what you've created here, it's more than just survival. It's living." Her words resonated deep within me. She was right. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to feel alive again, like maybe there was something I could offer the world after all. "I don't know if I'm ready for that," I said quietly, my voice tinged with uncertainty. "I'm not sure I can ever be that man again." Lena gave me a small smile, one of those quiet, knowing smiles that seemed to understand everything without needing to say much. "You're already becoming him, Jack. Every day, with every person who walks in this door, you're becoming him. You're more than just a man with a dog and a bakery. You're someone who's healing, someone who has the power to help others heal too." I didn't have a response. I just stood there, my hands resting on the counter, the weight of her words settling over me like a gentle rain. Lena had a way of seeing me that I wasn't used to, a way of making me feel like I mattered. But before I could say anything else, she stood up, her eyes sparkling with an idea. "You know," she said, "there's a lot of folks out there who could use this place. People who are hurting, people who need a place to gather, to feel at home. You're already doing that, Jack. Why not expand? You could host community events, hold gatherings, help people feel like they belong again." I stared at her, stunned by the suggestion. "I'm not sure I could pull that off," I muttered. "I don't have the skills to host events, let alone—" I trailed off, unsure of what she meant. But Lena just grinned. "You have the heart for it. And that's all you need. The rest will follow." And so, just like that, an idea began to take root. I started small, hosting a weekend coffee and cake gathering, inviting locals to come in, chat, and share their stories. To my surprise, it worked. People came, and they stayed, not just for the pastries, but for the warmth of the place. They talked, laughed, and shared their lives, all the while Max lay quietly by the door, watching over them. The bakery became more than just a business. It became a community hub, a sanctuary for those seeking connection. It wasn't long before I realized that Lena was right. This bakery was never just about me or my survival. It was about creating something that could heal the wounds of others, something that could give them hope, just as it had given me. And as I looked around the bustling bakery, the sounds of laughter and conversation filling the air, I realized that this was my purpose. I had never imagined how quickly things would change. Just a few months ago, I was a homeless veteran with nothing but my dog, Max, and the clothes on my back. Now, I was standing in the middle of a thriving bakery, surrounded by the sounds of chatter, laughter, and the comforting scent of fresh bread. What started as a simple act of kindness from Margaret had turned into something far greater than I could have ever dreamed. The bakery was alive, and so was I. I could feel the shift inside me every day as the people of the town walked through the door. They were no longer just customers. They were part of this new life I was building. And with every passing day, I realized that I wasn't just here to bake bread. I was here to make a difference. But with success came new challenges. The bakery was growing, but so were the expectations. The community had embraced me, but it was clear that I couldn't do it all on my own. I needed help. Lena, the park ranger who had become not just a friend but a mentor of sorts, had been encouraging me for weeks to take the next step. She had seen the potential in me long before I had recognized it in myself. "Jack," she said one afternoon as we sat at the corner table, "you've built something special here. But now you need to think bigger. This place is more than just a bakery. It's a place where people come to heal. And you have the ability to bring even more people in, to do even more good." Her words weighed heavily on me. She was right. The bakery had become a sanctuary for many. But could I really take it to the next level? Could I open my heart and my doors even wider? I had doubts, and they were hard to shake. But as I watched the people in the bakery, laughter echoing off the walls, the smell of fresh pastries filling the air, the warmth of shared moments, I realized that this was my chance to give back in a way I never thought possible. And it wasn't just about the bakery anymore. It was about offering people something they didn't know they needed. I took Lena's advice to heart. Over the next few weeks, I worked with a few local volunteers to expand the bakery's offerings. We began hosting community events, open mic nights, cooking classes, and even charity bake sales. Each event was a chance to bring people together, to create new connections, and to continue the healing process that had started for me. Max, ever the loyal companion, was always by my side, greeting visitors with his friendly bark and wagging tail. He had become more than just a dog to me. He was my partner in this journey, my reminder that loyalty and love could heal even the deepest wounds. One evening, after a particularly successful charity bake sale, Lena came into the bakery, her face lit with a smile. "I heard you raised more than double what you expected," she said, taking a seat at the counter. I grinned. "Yeah, it was incredible. I think people are starting to realize that this isn't just about selling bread. It's about giving back to the community, making sure no one feels alone." Lena nodded, her expression thoughtful. "You're doing something special here, Jack. Don't ever forget that." Her words struck a chord within me. I had been so focused on the next step, the next challenge, that I hadn't stopped to appreciate how far I had come. From a homeless veteran with nothing but a dream to the owner of a bakery that was truly making a difference in people's lives. It was more than I could have ever asked for. But just as I thought things might finally settle down, life had another surprise waiting for me. One chilly morning, as I opened the bakery for the day, I found a small, handwritten note tucked under the door. I picked it up, my fingers brushing the delicate paper. It was from Margaret, the woman who had started all of this. "Jack," it read, "I know I'm not there to see it, but I want you to know that I'm so proud of what you've done with the bakery. I've left you something in the back room that I believe will help you take this place to the next level. It's my gift to you, my way of saying thank you. You've not only saved my life, you've saved this bakery. Take care of it, and take care of yourself." I felt a lump form in my throat as I read the note again. Margaret had passed away months ago, but her spirit lived on in every corner of this place. I walked to the back room, my heart pounding in my chest. As I opened the door, I saw it, an old wooden chest, the kind that had been passed down through generations. I had never noticed it before. It was tucked away in the corner, almost as if it had been waiting for me. I opened the chest slowly, revealing a collection of old bakery equipment, recipes, and even some rare ingredients that Margaret had kept hidden for years. But there, at the bottom, was something even more surprising, a deed to a piece of land just outside of town. It was a farm, with acres of fertile land perfect for growing the ingredients needed for the bakery. I couldn't believe it. Margaret had left me not just her bakery, but the means to expand, to grow, to create something that could truly change the town. It was the final gift she had to offer, and it was exactly what I needed. As I stood there, holding the deed in my hands, I realized that this bakery wasn't just my second chance. It was a chance for the whole town to heal, to grow, and to come together in ways that no one had ever imagined. It was my miracle, and with that, I knew exactly what I had to do next. I stood there in the back room of the bakery, the deed to the land in my hand, my mind racing with a million thoughts. Margaret's final gift had been more than just a piece of property. It was the key to taking everything I had worked so hard for to the next level. The land she had left me wasn't just some empty plot. It was rich, fertile, and ready for something new to grow. It was the missing piece to a bigger vision. I had always believed that the bakery had the power to bring people together, but now I saw an opportunity to do more. I had the chance to not just serve the town with baked goods, but to provide a place for them to gather, to experience the food we grew, and to feel like part of something special. I couldn't let this opportunity slip by. As I walked back into the bakery, Max by my side, I felt a sense of urgency that I hadn't experienced before. The idea of what could be, of what I could create, was now within reach. I had always been a man of action, and this was the moment to act. The next few days were a whirlwind of planning, phone calls, and meetings with local farmers, builders, and even a few investors who had heard about the success of the bakery. I shared my vision with them, a farm-to-table experience, where the community could come together not just to buy bread, but to experience the food in its truest form. We would grow our own produce, raise animals for fresh eggs and milk, and create an environment where everyone could see the journey of their food from the ground to the table. It wasn't just about making a profit. It was about creating something that would sustain the town, something that could grow with the community. It took time, but little by little, the pieces started to fall into place. The land was cleared, a greenhouse was built, and we started planting. With the help of a few volunteers and a small group of local farmers, we began to grow the vegetables and fruits that would become the heart of our bakery's offerings. Each day, I woke up early, heading out to the farm to work alongside the team, Max always by my side. I was learning new things every day, and the satisfaction of seeing the first green sprouts push through the soil was unlike anything I had ever felt. It was a feeling of life, of growth, and of possibility. But it wasn't just about the farm. We also started building a small cafe on the property, where visitors could come to sit, relax, and enjoy fresh food grown right on the land. I knew that the bakery needed to be more than just a place to grab a quick bite. It needed to be a destination, a place where people could slow down and savor the experience. As the weeks went by, the farm and cafe began to take shape. The community rallied behind the idea, offering their support in ways I hadn't expected. They came to help with the planting, with the building, and with the cooking. It was more than just a business. It was a movement. One afternoon, as I stood on the porch of the newly built cafe, I watched the sunset over the fields. The sight of the golden light reflecting off the crops, the cool breeze rustling the leaves, and the sound of the town's chatter in the background filled me with a sense of pride and peace. This was what I had been searching for all along. This was the life I had been meant to live. I wasn't alone in this anymore. I had built something with the help of others, something that mattered. The farm and cafe became a gathering place, a place where people from all walks of life could come together to share stories, enjoy good food, and experience the simple joys of life. And in the heart of it all was the bakery, still thriving, still feeding the town, still serving as a reminder of where it all began. But as I stood there, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the journey I had taken to get here. I had been given so many second chances, first by Margaret, and then by the community, and now I was doing my best to give something back. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks and challenges along the way. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered if I was in over my head. But every time I felt that way, I reminded myself of why I started this in the first place, to help people, to bring them together, and to create something that would last. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the farm-to-table cafe became a cornerstone of the town. People came not just for the food, but for the sense of connection, the feeling that they were part of something bigger than themselves. And as for me, I had found my place. I had found my purpose. And I knew, without a doubt, that Margaret's gift had been the catalyst for all of it. The bakery, the farm, the cafe, everything was a part of her legacy. And now, it was my job to carry it forward, to continue building, to continue growing, and to continue sharing the love and kindness that had been shown to me. It was more than just a business. It was a home, a family, and a miracle in the making. I had never imagined how deeply my life would change after that one fateful day. The bakery was flourishing, the farm was growing, and people from all over the town were coming to the cafe not just for food, but for a sense of belonging. As the seasons passed, the place became a second home to many, a refuge where they could escape the stresses of their lives and enjoy the simplicity of good food and good company. But with growth came challenges, and I began to realize that I was on the verge of something bigger, something I wasn't fully prepared for. As the town's only place offering farm-fresh food, I had started receiving calls from people outside the area. Tourists passing through town heard about the bakery, and many wanted to see for themselves what all the fuss was about. With the sudden surge of interest, I realized I needed to do more than just run the bakery. I had to prepare for a future that was bigger than what I had originally imagined. One morning, as I was checking the orders for the day, I received a call from a man who introduced himself as an event coordinator for a regional food festival. He had heard about the bakery's success and the farm-to-table experience we were offering. "We'd love to feature you in our event," he said. "It's a big opportunity to showcase local businesses like yours." At first, I was hesitant. The thought of putting the bakery on display for so many people seemed overwhelming. But then I remembered all the people who had helped me get to this point. Lena, the volunteers, and the community. They had believed in me, and now it was time to show them that their faith in me had not been misplaced. I agreed to join the festival. The preparations were intense. I spent countless hours with my team, working to perfect the recipes, organizing the ingredients, and figuring out how to transport everything to the festival grounds. It was a huge undertaking, but every step of the way, I was reminded of how far we had come. Max, as always, was by my side, the perfect companion for this journey. The day of the festival arrived, and the event was even bigger than I had imagined. The streets were filled with vendors, live music, and the chatter of excited visitors. Our booth was set up under a large white tent, with a display of our signature breads, pastries, and jars of homemade jam. People from all over the region stopped by to sample our goods, their eyes lighting up at the taste of the fresh ingredients. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them enjoy what we had created. For the first time, it felt like the bakery wasn't just a local success. It was a part of something larger. As the day wore on, I noticed something unexpected. The line at our booth was getting longer, and people were returning for second and third servings. I overheard one woman telling her friend, "This is the best bread I've ever tasted. I'm definitely coming back to visit their bakery." The thought of our small town becoming a destination for food lovers filled me with pride. But it was also humbling. I knew that none of this would have been possible without Margaret's gift, without the community's support, and without the love I had for this place. It was during the late afternoon, as the festival was winding down, that I had a moment of clarity. I stepped out from behind the booth, taking in the sights and sounds around me. The festival was a celebration of local businesses, and we were a part of it. But as I stood there, watching people from all walks of life enjoying our food, I realized that this was just the beginning. I had been given a second chance, and now I had the opportunity to create something that could last for generations. The future was wide open. I knew that the bakery wasn't just about serving food. It was about building a legacy, a place where people could come together, share in the joys of good company, and experience the kind of hospitality that made them feel at home. And the farm wasn't just about growing produce. It was about showing people the beauty of what could be achieved when you put in the time and care. The festival had shown me that there was so much more we could do. As I watched people leaving with bags of bread and jars of jam, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. I had made it this far, but there was still work to be done. The festival had given me the push I needed to take the next step. I knew that this was only the beginning. When I returned to the bakery the next day, I felt more determined than ever. We had proven that our farm-to-table experience was something special, but now it was time to turn it into something sustainable. I sat down with my team and began discussing plans for expansion. We talked about adding new products, building partnerships with other local farms, and even opening a second location in a nearby town. The possibilities were endless. That night, as I walked outside to get some fresh air, I stood on the porch of the bakery, looking at the stars above. Max sat beside me, his head resting on my knee. It was in that quiet moment, with the sounds of the town humming in the distance, that I realized how much I had grown. The man I had once been, the man who had nothing, was gone, and in his place was someone who had a purpose, who had a vision for the future. This was just the beginning. The bakery, the farm, and the cafe were no longer just my second chance. They were a gift that I would continue to honor, one day at a time. I never expected that one decision, one small choice to join the food festival, would change the trajectory of everything I had built. The bakery had always been my sanctuary, a place to heal, and in turn, I had shared that healing with the town. But as the days passed after the festival, I realized the bakery was no longer just a business. It had become a symbol of resilience, hope, and new beginnings. The positive feedback from the festival was overwhelming. The lines grew longer, and the requests for our farm-to-table ingredients and bakery products flooded in. There was talk of us opening another location in a neighboring town, and even interest from restaurants and cafes who wanted to serve our bread and pastries. The buzz was exciting, but with that excitement came new responsibilities. I had built this place with my own hands, but now I needed a team to help me manage it all. The first step was hiring new staff, and I wanted to make sure that the people who joined the team were not just skilled, but passionate about the mission we had started. I didn't want just anyone behind the counter or in the kitchen. I wanted people who believed in the values of the bakery, those of community, care, and service. I found the perfect people. Sarah, the local schoolteacher who had been coming to the bakery every week for the past few months, agreed to come on board as the front-of-house manager. Her warmth and energy made her the perfect fit. Tom, the carpenter who had helped with the renovations, began working full-time to assist with maintaining the bakery and farm. He had a keen eye for detail and a love for this place that was contagious. Together, we worked to expand our operations, creating a smoother flow for both the bakery and the farm. As we moved forward, I knew we had to keep our community spirit alive. I started reaching out to local farmers and small businesses to form partnerships. We began sourcing even more ingredients locally, growing our farm's capacity, and using our platform to spotlight other artisans and farmers in the area. This wasn't just about building a bakery, it was about building a movement. One morning, as I walked through the fields of crops we had planted earlier that year, I couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. The sight of those fields, once barren and empty, now brimming with vegetables, grains, and fruits, was a testament to the hard work and dedication of so many people. But it wasn't just the physical growth of the farm that filled me with pride. It was the community that had sprung up around it. People came from all over to tour the farm, pick fresh produce, and take part in workshops. We held cooking classes, shared recipes, and even hosted a farm day event where families could come and pick their own fruits and vegetables, learning about where their food came from in the process. It was incredible to see how far we had come. But as the bakery's success grew, so did the challenges. There were days when I felt completely overwhelmed, when it seemed like there was too much to do and not enough time. Some days, I questioned whether I could keep up with the demands, especially as we began discussing the possibility of expanding into another location. I wasn't sure I was ready for that kind of growth. It was in those moments, when doubt crept in, that I remembered the gift Margaret had given me. She had given me the chance to build something bigger than myself, something that would endure. I couldn't let that slip away. I had to push forward, not just for the bakery, but for everyone who had believed in me. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I sat on the porch of the bakery, watching the glow of the streetlights begin to flicker on. Max was lying next to me, his head resting on his paws. The bakery was closed for the night, but I could still hear the faint hum of life from the kitchen, where Sarah and Tom were preparing for the next day's orders. It was peaceful, and in that moment, I realized that I was no longer just the owner of a bakery. I was the heart of a community. We were all building this together, and it was something beautiful. The next day, I made the decision to take the leap. We would open a second location. I couldn't do it alone, and I didn't want to. The bakery was about more than just bread and pastries. It was about people. It was about the relationships we had built, the lives we had touched, and the hope we had created. This wasn't just a bakery anymore. It was a way of life. As I walked through the bakery that morning, I felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders, but it wasn't a burden. It was a gift that I had been given and that I would pass on to others. I wasn't just baking bread anymore. I was baking a future. The second bakery would open soon. It wasn't going to be easy, but I had the right people by my side. And together, we would build something that would continue to serve this community for years to come. I had always dreamed of something bigger, but I never truly understood the weight of that dream until I began working on the second location. It was an exciting time, but also a daunting one. The first bakery had been a labor of love, a product of hard work and community support, but now it was clear that everything I had built was going to be tested in new ways. The idea of expanding into a second bakery felt like a leap of faith, one that I wasn't sure I was ready for, but I had already made the decision. There was no turning back. The new bakery was to be located in the next town over, a growing area that I had seen potential in. I wanted this second place to be even more than a bakery. It would be an extension of everything we had created in the first one, a gathering space, a hub for the community, and a symbol of what could be achieved when people came together. The process wasn't easy. We had to find the right location, renovate the space, and build a team from scratch. But every step of the way, I knew we were moving towards something incredible. Lena, who had been a constant source of encouragement and support, was by my side every step of the way. We worked together on the design and layout, making sure the space would reflect the same warmth and welcoming atmosphere that had made the first bakery so special. It wasn't just about serving food. It was about creating an experience that made people feel at home. There were days when I felt completely overwhelmed by the sheer amount of work that needed to be done. I had to balance overseeing both locations, managing the farm, and ensuring everything was running smoothly. But each time I felt the pressure mounting, I reminded myself of why I was doing this in the first place, to create something that would last, to build a legacy. As the construction of the new bakery progressed, we began to hire new staff. I was careful about who I brought on board. I wanted people who shared the same values and vision, people who cared about the community as much as I did. One of the first hires was a young woman named Emily. She had been working in a local coffee shop and had heard about the bakery through a friend. When she came in for the interview, she had a quiet energy about her, someone who listened more than she spoke. It didn't take long for me to realize that Emily had the same passion for food and community that we had cultivated in the first bakery. She quickly became one of the team's core members, and I could see her thriving in this new environment. As the opening day for the new bakery approached, I found myself feeling both excited and nervous. Would people like it? Would they embrace this new chapter? I had learned from the first bakery that it wasn't just about the food. It was about the experience, the connections, and the shared moments that made people feel like they were part of something. On the eve of the grand opening, I stood in the empty bakery, the lights dim, and the quiet buzz of anticipation in the air. Max sat at my feet, his eyes reflecting the excitement I felt in my heart. It was a moment of stillness before the storm of opening day. I thought about the journey that had brought me here, the struggles, the doubts, the support of the community, and the unwavering faith that had carried me through. It had been a long road, but here we were, on the verge of something new, something bigger than I could have imagined when I first started this journey. Opening day was a whirlwind of activity. The line started forming before we even opened the doors, and when we did, the flood of people was overwhelming. There were old faces from the original bakery, along with new customers from the neighboring town. The air was filled with the sound of chatter, laughter, and the clink of coffee cups. We had worked so hard to create a space that would bring people together, and it was clear that the effort had paid off. As I moved through the crowd, greeting familiar faces and introducing myself to new ones, I felt a sense of pride that I couldn't quite put into words. This wasn't just about expanding a business. It was about building a community, about creating a place where people could gather, share, and support each other. By the end of the day, we had sold out of nearly everything: breads, pastries, coffee, and the overwhelming response left me speechless. It wasn't just the success of the day that moved me. It was the way the community had embraced the bakery, the way they had become part of its story. The second bakery wasn't just a business expansion. It was a continuation of the journey we had started in the first bakery, a journey that was far from over. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity as we balanced both locations and continued to build our farm-to-table model. The new bakery became a hub for even more people, a place where neighbors gathered, shared meals, and enjoyed each other's company. Lena, always supportive, would often stop by with new ideas for events and community activities. We hosted cooking classes, farm tours, and even a weekly market where local artisans could sell their goods. The new bakery was thriving, and so was the community. But despite all the success, I never forgot where it all began. The first bakery, Margaret's gift, and the unwavering support of the people around me. As I stood in the second bakery one evening, watching the sunset from the window, I realized that the story we had started together was just beginning. We had built something special, something that would continue to grow, evolve, and bring people together for years to come. It wasn't just about bread anymore. It was about creating a legacy of community, connection, and hope. I sat at the counter of the second bakery one evening, watching the last of the customers trickle out into the cool night air. The soft hum of conversation and laughter had faded, replaced by the quiet murmur of the evening. Max, as always, lay at my feet, his eyes half closed in peaceful contentment. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short time. The second bakery, which had once seemed like an impossible dream, was now thriving. The town had embraced it as its own, and the sense of community that I had hoped to cultivate was alive and well. But even as I sat there, the weight of the future pressed down on me. We had built something extraordinary, but I couldn't help but wonder what would come next. There was a part of me that feared this success could slip away just as quickly as it had come. The farm-to-table model had become a cornerstone of our identity, and I knew we had to continue evolving to stay relevant. Expanding the farm was one step, but I needed to figure out how to keep our momentum going without losing sight of the values that had brought us this far. As I sat lost in thought, Lena walked into the bakery, her usual smile lighting up the room. "You look deep in thought," she said, pulling up a chair next to me. "Everything going okay?" I nodded slowly, grateful for her presence. Lena had become not just a friend but a trusted partner in this journey. Her perspective had been invaluable, and her belief in the bakery had never wavered. "I'm just thinking about the future," I said, my voice quiet. "Everything's going well, but I can't shake the feeling that there's more to do. I want to keep building, keep growing, but I don't want to lose what makes us special." Lena leaned back in her chair, taking a deep breath as she considered my words. "You've built something incredible, Jack. But you're right, it's not about staying still. It's about growing in a way that stays true to who you are." I smiled. "It's easy to get caught up in the numbers, in the demand. Sometimes I forget why we started this in the first place." "You started this to bring people together," Lena said. "To create a place where people could feel at home. And that's what you've done. The community is stronger than ever. But you're right, there's always room for growth. The key is to stay connected to that heart of yours, that core vision. As long as you do that, everything else will fall into place." Her words gave me the clarity I needed. Lena was right. I had gotten so caught up in the logistics of running a business, in making sure every detail was perfect, that I had started to lose sight of what really mattered. It wasn't just about having the best bread or the busiest cafe. It was about creating a space where people could come together, where they could find joy in the simple things, and where they could feel part of something larger than themselves. I thought about the way the bakery had transformed over the past year. It had started as a small, humble place where I baked bread and served pastries. But it had grown into something more, a symbol of hope, resilience, and community. And that was the part one had to hold on to. The rest, the expansion, the second bakery, the farm, was just the vehicle that would allow me to keep serving that purpose. "I think I know what we need to do," I said, standing up and looking out the window at the quiet street outside. "We need to continue growing, but we have to do it with intention. We need to keep focusing on the people, on what they need, and on how we can serve them. We can't just expand for the sake of expansion. It has to make sense, and it has to be true to who we are." Lena nodded in agreement. "Exactly. You've already created a space that people love. Now it's about sustaining that love, nurturing it, and growing it in a way that keeps the heart of the bakery intact." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. For the first time in a while, I felt like I had a clear path forward. The next steps wouldn't be easy. There would be new challenges, new obstacles, but I was ready. We were ready. The bakery wasn't just a business. It was a home, a community, and a movement. It was time to continue growing, but to do so with purpose. That evening, as I locked up the bakery and stepped outside into the cool night, I felt the weight of the journey I had been on. It had been hard, but it had been worth it. And the best part was, we weren't done yet. The bakery, the farm, the community, it was all just beginning. There was so much more to come, and I couldn't wait to see what the future held. The road ahead might be uncertain, but as long as we kept our focus on the people, on the heart of what we were doing, we would be okay. We would continue to build, to grow, and to serve. And that, I realized, was all that really mattered. I stood in the new bakery, a quiet smile on my face as I looked around. It was just a few months ago that we had opened the second location, and already, it felt like home. The lines of people, the laughter echoing off the walls, the familiar hum of activity, it was all proof of how far we had come. But as I stood there, I couldn't help but think back to where it all started. The first bakery had been a small step into the unknown, a leap of faith that turned into something far bigger than I could have ever imagined. Now, with 2 successful bakeries, a growing farm, and a community that had rallied behind us, I realized that we were on the cusp of something even greater. Yet with that realization came new challenges. Expanding had been the easy part. The real test was sustaining what we had built and finding ways to keep pushing forward without losing the heart of what made us special. We had created a movement, but how could we continue to grow without losing the sense of connection that made the bakery a sanctuary for so many? I knew the answer, but it wasn't easy. We had to keep focusing on what mattered most, the people. We had to make sure that every loaf of bread, every cup of coffee, every bite of pastry was more than just food. It had to be an experience, a reminder that they were part of something bigger. I started thinking about ways to expand our reach, but in a way that stayed true to our values. It wasn't enough to open more locations or sell more products. We needed to build a community, not just a business. That's when the idea of a community foundation hit me. What if we could do more than just provide good food? What if we could create a place where people could come to learn, grow, and connect? What if we could help those in need, just as the community had helped me when I first started? The idea was simple. We would create a foundation that focused on education, sustainability, and support for local artisans and farmers. We could host workshops on farming, cooking, and sustainable living, as well as offer grants to help small businesses in the area grow. It was a way to give back to the community that had given so much to us. I spent the next few months working on the foundation, putting together a team of passionate individuals who believed in the mission. Lena was one of the first people I brought on board. Her expertise in community outreach and her unwavering belief in what we were doing made her the perfect fit. Together, we began reaching out to local organizations, schools, and businesses to partner with us. The response was overwhelming. People were excited about the idea of a community foundation that wasn't just about charity, but about empowerment. We had a vision to create a space where people could learn and grow together, where they could share knowledge and resources, and where everyone had a place. The first event we hosted through the foundation was a community harvest festival. We invited local farmers to showcase their produce, offered cooking classes, and held a charity bake sale, with all proceeds going to support the foundation's efforts. It was a huge success, with hundreds of people coming together to celebrate the bounty of the land and the strength of the community. The event not only raised money for the foundation, but it also brought people together in a way that was deeply moving. I watched as neighbors who had never spoken before shared stories, exchanged recipes, and connected over the simple joys of good food and good company. It reminded me of why I had started this journey in the first place. It wasn't just about running a bakery. It was about creating something that would last, something that could bring people together, and something that could help them heal. As the months passed, the foundation continued to grow. We expanded our workshops, added new programs, and provided resources to local businesses. It wasn't always easy. There were setbacks, challenges, and moments of doubt. But with every challenge we faced, we found a way to push forward, to adapt, and to keep the vision alive. One day, as I stood in the bakery, watching the hustle and bustle of the morning rush, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. Max sat by my feet, watching the crowd with his usual calm demeanor. It had been a long road to get here, but we had built something truly special. I looked around at the faces in the bakery. Some were regulars, some were newcomers, but all of them shared a connection to this place. This bakery, this farm, this foundation, it wasn't just a business. It was a part of the fabric of the community, and it was exactly what I had hoped for when I first started. The road ahead was still uncertain, but I knew that as long as we stayed true to our values, as long as we focused on the people, we would continue to thrive. The future was bright, not because of what we had accomplished, but because of the people we had helped along the way. This was only the beginning, and I couldn't wait to see what the next chapter would bring. I had been standing at the counter, watching the morning rush unfold as the smell of fresh-baked bread filled the air. It was a typical day at the bakery, but there was a new sense of excitement in the air. The foundation we had created was beginning to take root, and I could see the difference it was making in the community. People were no longer just coming for bread. They were coming to be a part of something bigger. The bakery had become a place of healing, a place where people could come together to share stories, to learn, and to grow. It was more than just a business. It was a movement. But as much as we had accomplished, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still more to do. The community foundation was flourishing, and I knew it was time to take it to the next level. We had been providing educational workshops, supporting local farmers, and giving back to the community, but I realized that we had the opportunity to make an even bigger impact. The question was, how? One evening, as I sat with Lena over a cup of coffee at the bakery, I shared my thoughts. "We've done so much already," I said, looking around at the bustling cafe. "But I feel like we're just scratching the surface. We have the farm, the bakery, the foundation. But how do we reach more people? How do we make an even bigger difference?" Lena leaned back in her chair, her expression thoughtful. "You've already built a foundation that's helping so many people," she said. "But if you want to make a bigger impact, it's about thinking even bigger. What if we expand the foundation's work into something that could change the whole town?" I raised an eyebrow. "How do you mean? What if we took the farm-to-table model and expanded it beyond just food?" Lena said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "What if we used the farm to teach people about sustainability, about how they can grow their own food, about living off the land in a way that's good for the environment? We could partner with schools, bring in experts, and offer training on sustainable farming, cooking, and more." The idea was brilliant. It was exactly what we needed. I had always been passionate about sustainability, and now, with the farm in full swing and the foundation growing, we had the resources to make it happen. Over the next few weeks, Lena and I worked together to plan out how we could bring this vision to life. We reached out to local schools, community centers, and environmental groups, asking for their support in building a sustainable farming program. The response was overwhelmingly positive. We set up workshops on organic farming, composting, and water conservation, and even started offering cooking classes that focused on using local, seasonal ingredients. People were eager to learn, and as the program grew, we began to see the ripple effect. Families were starting to grow their own food, schools were incorporating sustainable farming practices into their curriculum, and local businesses were adopting greener practices. It was incredible to see how far-reaching the impact had become. But just as things were looking up, a new challenge emerged. The town was facing a financial crisis. A large factory that had been the town's main employer for decades was shutting down, leaving hundreds of people out of work. The loss hit the town hard, and many people were left wondering how they would make ends meet. It was in that moment that I realized the true potential of what we had built. We weren't just providing food. We were providing a way for people to take control of their lives, to rebuild from the ground up. It was time to step up and help our community in a way that went beyond food and farming. Lena and I quickly mobilized, reaching out to our partners and supporters to see how we could help. We organized job fairs, offered training for new skills, and worked with local businesses to create opportunities for those who had lost their jobs. We even opened the bakery's kitchen as a training facility, offering classes on baking, cooking, and sustainable business practices. The response was overwhelming. People were eager to learn new skills, to rebuild, and to take control of their future. It wasn't easy, but together, we made it through. As the months went by, I watched as the town began to rebuild itself. The bakery became a central hub of activity, not just for food, but for hope. People came to learn, to share, and to support each other. The town was stronger than it had ever been, and I realized that the foundation we had built wasn't just about bread. It was about resilience, about helping people find their way when the world seemed uncertain. Standing in the bakery one evening, I looked out the window at the town, now bustling with life again. Max sat by my feet, his eyes reflecting the quiet pride I felt. It had been a long journey, but it was worth it. The bakery, the farm, the foundation, it was all more than I could have ever imagined. And as I stood there, I knew that the story we had started together was far from over. I stood at the counter of the bakery, looking around at the familiar faces, old friends, new customers, and everyone in between. It had been a year since the town had faced its crisis, and in that time, so much had changed. The bakery had become a symbol of resilience, not just for me, but for the entire community. People had come together, rebuilt their lives, and now we were stronger than ever. I had always known that the bakery wasn't just about bread. It was about creating something that people could connect to, something that could hold them together in the toughest of times. But even with all the growth, the challenges never stopped coming. We were still facing the reality of balancing two locations, a growing farm, and now the expanding community foundation. But it wasn't just about keeping things running anymore. It was about making sure the foundation we had built was sustainable, not just for our generation, but for the future. The idea of legacy had become a driving force for me. I wanted to leave something that would outlast me, something that would continue to grow long after I was gone. One evening, after closing up the second bakery, I sat with Lena in the small office at the back, our usual spot for brainstorming and planning. She had been by my side through everything, from the first bakery to the expansion, the crisis, and now the foundation. "Jack," she said, her voice steady but thoughtful, "we've done so much. The bakery, the farm, the foundation, everything is growing. But we need to start thinking long-term. What's next? What are we building toward?" Her question echoed in my mind. It was true. We had built something incredible, but now it was time to turn our focus to sustainability. We needed to plan not just for tomorrow, but for the next 5, 10, or even 20 years. "I've been thinking about that a lot," I said. "I want to create something that lasts, something that continues to give back to the town, to the community, even after we're gone." The bakery isn't just a business. It's a place where people find belonging. The farm is a way of teaching people to be self-sufficient. But the foundation, that's where I see the future. We need to expand it, reach more people, teach more people, help more people. Lena smiled, a spark of excitement in her eyes. "I've been thinking the same thing," she said. "We've helped so many already, but what if we could do more? What if we could build a network of support, other towns, other communities, where people could learn the same skills we're teaching here?" The idea hit me like a lightning bolt. We could create a network, a larger movement that focused on sustainable living, community support, and local farming. It wouldn't just be about our bakery or our farm. It would be about creating a blueprint that could be replicated in other towns, other communities. We could offer workshops, build partnerships with other local businesses, and create a movement that would teach others how to build their own self-sustaining ecosystems. It wasn't just about food. It was about changing the way people lived, worked, and connected with their communities. We began planning immediately, reaching out to organizations, local leaders, and businesses to start building the foundation for our network. We would need to create educational programs, provide resources, and form partnerships that would allow other communities to replicate what we had done. But we also realized that we needed more than just practical knowledge. We needed to inspire people. We needed to show them that they could be part of something bigger, something meaningful. Lena and I started traveling to other towns, sharing our story, and learning from others who were doing similar work. Every town we visited had its own challenges, its own unique struggles, but there was one thing that became clear. The desire for community, for connection, for something real was universal. Everywhere we went, people were hungry for change, for something they could believe in. We came back with new ideas, new perspectives, and a renewed sense of purpose. We were ready to expand the foundation into a full-fledged movement. We began offering grants to help local businesses get off the ground. We partnered with schools to offer sustainability workshops, and we created an outreach program that would help struggling towns find the support they needed to grow. The first year was a whirlwind of activity, emails, phone calls, meetings, but slowly, we began to see the ripple effect. Other towns were starting to adopt our model, and we were helping them every step of the way. Our network was growing, and with it, our impact. But despite all the progress, there were moments when I felt overwhelmed. The pressure to succeed, to make a difference, felt heavier than ever. It was easy to get caught up in the hustle, to focus on the numbers, the deadlines, the constant need for growth. But when I stepped back, when I took a moment to breathe, I remembered why we were doing this in the first place. To help people, to bring them together, and to create something that would last. We weren't just building a bakery. We were building a future where communities could thrive, where people could find their place, and where the values of hard work, kindness, and sustainability would continue to shape the world. And that was worth every challenge, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. It wasn't just about what we had accomplished, it was about what was still to come. The months passed, and the movement we had started continued to grow, expanding beyond what I had ever imagined. The second bakery was thriving. The farm had become a model for sustainable living, and the foundation was helping more communities than ever before. But the journey was far from over. Every day brought new challenges, new opportunities, and new lessons to be learned. I had always believed that the heart of our success lay in the people, the community we had built, the partnerships we had formed, and the shared vision that had brought us together. But now, as I stood at the helm of something much bigger than I had ever dreamed, I began to realize that the true measure of our success was not in what we had built, but in how we had helped others build their own futures. I had learned that it wasn't about how much we could grow, it was about how much we could give. The bakery, the farm, the foundation, it was never just about bread or produce. It was about creating a space where people could thrive, where they could feel supported, and where they could believe in their own potential. It was about creating a legacy, not just for me, but for everyone who had helped along the way. But as much as we had achieved, there was still more to do. The world was changing, and I knew we had to keep evolving to meet the needs of our communities. We had to find new ways to engage, to inspire, and to empower. And that's when I had an idea that would take everything we had built to a whole new level. I gathered the team together one afternoon, our minds buzzing with possibilities. We had always focused on the local community, but what if we could reach beyond our town? What if we could take our message of sustainability, community, and empowerment to the world? I proposed the idea of creating a global network of like-minded businesses, a collective of small-scale farmers, artisans, and entrepreneurs who shared the same values we did. We could connect with others who were building businesses that prioritized people, sustainability, and ethical practices. Together, we could create a global movement for change. The idea was ambitious, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. We had already proven that small businesses could thrive by staying true to their values. We had seen firsthand how much power there was in community, in collaboration, and in creating something that gave back. The time had come to expand our reach, to make our impact even bigger. We started reaching out to other businesses, forming partnerships, and organizing global events that would bring together entrepreneurs, farmers, and community leaders from all over the world. It wasn't easy. There were logistical challenges, cultural differences, and countless other hurdles to overcome. But with every challenge came an opportunity to learn, to grow, and to connect. Slowly, but surely, our global network began to take shape. And as it did, I couldn't help but reflect on how far we had come. From a single bakery in a small town to a thriving community of businesses and individuals all working toward the same goal, helping each other build better, more sustainable futures. Looking back on the journey, I realized that none of this would have been possible without the support of the people around me. The community that had rallied behind the bakery, the volunteers who had helped build the farm, the partners who had believed in the foundation's mission. Without them, there would be no movement, no legacy, no change. As the network grew, we began hosting larger events, bringing together thousands of people from across the globe. We held conferences, workshops, and even international sustainability summits. The message was clear. It was time to work together, to support one another, and to build a better future for everyone. At one of these summits, I found myself standing in front of a large crowd, talking about our journey, the bakery, the farm, the foundation, and the incredible impact we had made. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. This wasn't just my story. It was all of ours. It was a story of collaboration, of community, and of what can happen when people come together to make a difference. The work wasn't over, but the future felt brighter than ever. Our mission was far from complete, but we had built something meaningful, something that would continue to inspire others to join the movement. And as I stood there, knowing that we had created something bigger than ourselves, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. This was what I had always wanted, to build a legacy that would live on, to help others find their way, and to know that we had made the world just a little bit better. The journey had been long, but it was only the beginning. There was still so much more to do, so much more to give. And I was ready. We all were. Together, we had created something that mattered. And the best part? We were just getting started.